Welcome to the nation analysis for early age Qingqi. Qingqi is a nation of humans. They have good troops. They have a lot of different magic, but not very high paths in those magics. Their priests are average, as it says here, and they build standard forts. The first kind of troop you're gonna want to know about is the footmen. The footmen comes in three varieties: the normal or light footmen, the medium footmen, and the heavy footmen. The light footmen are not very survivable, especially early on. They cost you 10 gold per. They don't cost a lot of resources either. And they have map move 12, which is nice because then you get to move 2 provinces in ideal circumstances. And later on you can actually buff them enough with magic that they become survivable enough to be viable, I think. The light ones come in 3 varieties. First one is the pike. The pike, I don't really like these. You can repel with a longer weapon, and it is length 5, so it can repel pretty much anything except a giant holding a pike, but you're not gonna run into that very often. But 10 attack is not enough to repel, because how repel works is your attack skill is measured against the opponent's defense skill plus a dice roll. So let's say you come up against an opponent who also has 10 defense and you have 10 attack, then you only repel him 50% of the time. And if he has high morale, he will just not care about your repel and attack you anyway. So you don't really get a lot of defensive value out of the pike. I would prefer to have a shield. Then you have the glaive variety. Glaives are really good against things that are hard to kill, because it has slash and pierce damage. 22 pierce damage is good. You need a lot of armor to withstand 22 pierce damage. And there isn't a lot of stuff with a lot of armor in the early age, so these are good for cutting down things that wouldn't die easily otherwise. And you have the spear and shield variety. These are good against archers, which includes your own archers, because there's no such thing as a directional shield in the minions, so it will block your own arrows just as well as enemy arrows. Which means these guys can stand in the front and your archers can just pelt the entire line with arrows, and if they hit your own guys, well, so what? The tower shield has a parry of 7, so it will probably block the arrow. And if it doesn't, it's a 10 gold troop. It's still not a big deal. The spear, however, is a bit of a disappointing weapon. 13 pierce damage. There's pretty much nothing you're ever gonna go up against that you kill in a single hit with 13 pierce damage. Well, maybe a lion tribe warrior or something. Other than that, even a human with a slight bit of armor is gonna survive this attack most of the time. So they are mostly useful for holding the line. With the shield they do have 14 defense, because the shield is also big and heavy, so that reduces the defense, but then it has 7 defense. The shield has a protection of 16, so they're gonna have to go through the shield first, then your protection if they hit the shield, so it's pretty reliable, but 14 defense isn't that great either. You will still take hits in melee combat. So these guys are mostly good for if the enemy uses archers or if you use archers. Then there's the medium footmen. The medium footmen are pretty much the same as the light footmen, except that it costs 3 more resources and have 1 more armor. This might not seem like a lot, but they cost the same amount of gold, so you don't care about that. The same amount of recruitment points, so that doesn't matter either. So if you can actually spare the resources, that one extra protection might actually be good, because let's say the enemy is doing, let's say the enemy is doing 10 damage and you have 10 protection. Then on average they do 0 damage. If you have 9 protection, on average they do 1 damage. So every attack will do 1 extra damage to you, and if the attacks do very little damage, it's actually a very big difference. So I like the medium footmen, they're not useless. The third type is the heavy footmen. Now the heavy footmen only have 8 map move, which means that pretty much all the time, because I don't play on maps with roads a lot. So yes, in every situation they move 1 square on the big map. So they're slow. Their combat speed is also slow. What they do have is 15 protection. So for 9 extra resources, same gold, same recruitment points, you get 6 extra protection as compared to the light footmen. So these definitely have a role to fill. If you just need front line that after you cast some magic on it, it just doesn't die to normal troops, these are your guys. Just gonna require a lot of planning to make them show up on the front line at the right time. Then there's the horseman. No, wait, we have to talk about the archer first. The archer is actually a really good archer, because you usually, for 10 gold in the early age, what you get is a short bow. This guy has a composite bow, and a composite bow has 5 extra range compared to a short bow. So if you're fighting short bows, you get the first volley off and they still have to walk forward. You also get an extra point of accuracy, because a short bow has precision 0 and this thing has precision 1. That actually makes a good bit of difference, because every point of precision above 10 I think counts double or something. So you will hit more and you will hit from a bigger distance and you will do more damage than a short bow man. On top of that, you have 9 protection, and in the early age there's plenty of short bows with less than 10 protection, so it's definitely a good thing to have these things. Next thing, is the horseman. And I don't like the horseman, because it's 20 gold. It also has a composite bow, but then you're paying twice the price for a composite bow, and because he's mounted he only has 8 precision. So you're gonna miss a lot. This is twice as much for the same amount of arrow output. Same protection, by the way. And it doesn't hit nearly as much. It does have 18 map move opposed to 12 when you're comparing it to the archer. So you can get it into battles where the archer wouldn't be there. But those are niche situations. I think it's just too expensive for a low protection bow. Now it also has a light lance, which does get a charge bonus on the first strike. However, it's a light lance, attack 10, on a squishy horseman with 10 strength. So this is not a heavy cavalry lance charge. This is more like an upgraded spear or something. It's, in my experience, it's just not very good, and it's a waste of money to get these. Then there's the sacred one, the warrior of the 5 elements. And I've read guides online that tell you to build a bless around this, but I have to say I disagree. They cost 35 gold. So you can get, if you get 2 of these, you could get 7 of the footmen. I'd rather have 7 footmen actually. They're sacred, so they can use your bless, but then you're gonna have to take a pretty big blessing to make these viable. Now, if you were to do that, they could cut through, a lot. But then you're spending hundreds of design points on your pretender, on these guys, which means that you're gonna get less skills, you're not gonna get blessing to do something else, which might be useful. For a 12 hit point human with 2 short swords that aren't magical and a leather cuirass, I don't see the point of getting these guys. I think in my game I never built a single one of these. Moreover, they have Strength of Spring, which sounds good, but is actually very bad. Because Strength of Spring means that they have 50% less hit points during autumn. You might think like, oh well, I'll just not go into a battle in autumn, but you also have map move 14 and there's lots of nations with more mobility. If somebody sieges your fort during autumn and cracks walls, you're gonna end up in a fight, whether you want to or not. It's not up to you. And then you're gonna have these guys which in autumn will have 6 hit points, and you're gonna be miserable. So if you wanna play early age TNG, my advice to you is do not rely on these. They're not good. They're, in my opinion, possibly the worst sacred in the game. On top of that, well, they do have the 5 resistance and everything, which is kinda good, but also not really that good, because 5 resistance won't save you from most things. They're capital only, so if you build a bless around it, if you succeed with that bless, it's gonna become less and less viable as your empire grows. Because if you get more forts, there's still only gonna be 1 fort that builds these things. And they're just not gonna be good. They're not gonna be good enough to justify putting that many points in making them viable in the first place. So I just wouldn't bother with these. Really. And then there's the noble. And the noble is 45 gold, which is even 10 gold more than your sacred. And he's not sacred, but you can recruit him in every fort. He's size 4, he tramples, and he has 18 protection, of which 15 protection body armor. And the buckler, so he might survive some arrows or something. Which also means that he has a defense skill of 15. These, with a little bit of point buffing with a mage, can do real damage. These are really good in my opinion. Moving on to the commanders. Okay, first of all you have a scout. It's a scout. It's nice to have a scout because then you're not reliant on finding independent scouts in a province. But really, it's just a scout. So, next you have the noble commander. And the noble commander is awesome. It's 105 gold. Okay, that's expensive. It has 18 protection, basically the same stats as the noble troop, except that it gets an extra defense and an extra attack compared to that thing. And basically, if it were naked, it would already be attack 12, defense 15. So it just has good base stats. If you give it a thorn staff, it will have really good stats. It can trample, and while it's trampling, it will still repel things with the thorn staff. The thorn staff is length 3, but because this thing is size 4, the thorn staff will count as length 4. So it's going to repel anything with a length 3 weapon. If you have an Astral 1 mage, you can cast Body Ethereal, Luck, Twist Fate, and then run away. The Body Ethereal will negate 75% of all incoming attacks that aren't magical. The Twist Fate will negate the first attack that would damage him. And the Luck will, 75% of the time, negate the attack that would kill him. This will make him multiple times more survivable than without it. This way you can easily run over 6 province defense. You will most of the time run over 11 province defense. And potentially run over 19 province defense. Now let's say you run into something you can't deal with. Let's say your opponent has magic weapons, for instance, or there's just too much stuff to fight through. What you can do is get a master of the 5 elements, have him cast Iron Warriors, Quickness, Moss Body, and Enlarge. You're gonna need a few gems or boosters for this, but nothing too crazy. This will run over more province defense, this will run over magic weapons, this will run over larger things, because he is now size 5 instead of size 4. It will also do more trample damage, because trample damage is related to your size. And his protection will go up considerably. So yeah, the Noble Commander is really good. Okay, then you have the Master of the Dead. The Master of the Dead is a dead one, holy one, sacred, with 7 research. This is a really cheap way to research. It also is your Dark Knowledge caster. You only have dead 1 mages in this nation. So you could search the entire land for dead 1. And at the start you're gonna do that a little bit. But after that you have a lot of dead gems and nothing to spend them on yet. So what you can do is you can cast Dark Knowledge everywhere, find not just level 1 dead sites, and get a whole lot of dead gems. And then later on in the game, when you actually have some uses for those dead gems, you will have a pile of them. What it can also do is it can summon Ancestor Ghosts. And I will get into more detail about the Ancestor Ghosts later on, but I can tell you they're pretty good. The 2 spells that you have for that, the first one is, I think, Conjuration 0, which summons a single ghost. So it's an alternative to spamming out single skeletons. And with the right bless, you'd rather have a ghost, because the ghost is sacred. What it can also do at Conjuration 7 is cast a spell for 1 dead gem that summons 20 ghosts. Now, if you, and I have done this in this game, have a bunch of these guys, have them summon 40 ghosts each with that spell, and your opponent doesn't see it coming, they're gonna be just overwhelmed by little blessed ghosts. This mage is great. It can also throw a Sutra, which is good versus undead and demons, but it does 2 damage and a paralyze effect. I haven't used it, to be honest, but I don't know, maybe you can do something with it. Then we get to the Master of the Way. The Master of the Way is your recruit anywhere magic diversity mage, I would say. With 135 gold, he is not as efficient a researcher, but you get 9 research points. I say he's still pretty viable as a researcher. And you're gonna want a lot of these, because these can make your armies a lot stronger. They're also good for foraging, because a lot of the time with foraging you're just gonna want 1 in a single pot, because you want to forge one of the 5 gem items. It's good to have these guys, so you don't have to spend turns with your expensive cap-only mages forging a simple item, when you can just get one of these guys to do it. They are also recruitable outside of forts. If you build a lab and a temple somewhere outside, you couldn't recruit these guys. And the way I'm gonna play it is with skills and a lot of money. And there's a limit to how many forts you want, because at some point the forts are gonna steal resources from each other and not really give you all that much of a benefit. Putting a temple outside of a fort is a bit scary, but it can be done in the right circumstances, and then you have more of these guys. They have randoms. They can have air, water, astral, or nature. The air one is good for forging owl quills, and you're gonna want quite some owl quills. So that's useful to have a cheap recruit anywhere mage that can make your owl quill. If you were to give it a crystal matrix and get a bunch of communion slaves, it could cast freezing mist. I don't think it's gonna be something you do a lot, but if you were to fight something that's vulnerable to nothing except cold, it's an issue. It's there. The Water 2 variant can cast quickness, and having a lot of mages around that can all cast quickness is great, because it will make your chariots trample faster, and it will make any troop you cast on have twice as many attacks, 2 extra attack, and 2 extra defense. So if you have something high value and you cast quickness on it, it becomes a lot more valuable. With an opponent's defense being the same, 2 extra points of attack gives you something like 35 extra percentage chance to hit or something. It's a big difference. The same goes for defense. So quickness is great, and if you have a cheap mage, which you have a lot of that costs quickness, awesome. The astral variant can do body ethereal and be a communion slave, which are both excellent uses. They have only 9 hit points, so you want to get them a few extra hit points somehow, especially if you're going to put personal regeneration in your communion, because with those extra hit points they will regenerate 2 hit points per turn instead of 1. So that will make them able to support twice as many communion masters, but there are plenty of ways of doing that. One more variant I need to talk about, that's the nature variant, which will then be water nature, which is also great, because then you get to cast moss body everywhere, and with the right gear you can also use them to cast vile vapors, although I would use a different one for that. Yeah, water nature is definitely a good path to have in your arsenal. People are generally very happy to find the Amazons for that reason. Definitely good to have on a Recruit Anywhere National Mage. Then there's the Master of the 5 Elements. These give you access to all of the paths that are elemental and nature. And they also get 100% random in all of those paths. So there are going to be 1 in all of these paths and 2 in one of these paths. Which is great. It's great for forging. You're going to have access to a lot of different forging. You can create a bunch of path boosters with these guys, which means that your low paths are going to be up as the game progresses. You're going to have access to more stuff. They are fast researchers, even though they're not efficient researchers. Although they are still sacred, so they're not that inefficient. 17 research points is not to sneeze at, in my opinion. And let's go over the randoms though. So you can have Fire 2, which is great for fire evocations. You cast Phoenix Power, then you Fire 3, and then you can just throw a lot of evocations forward. Fire 3 with 2 Fire Gems can cast Flaming Arrows, which you have great archers. Fire 3 can also summon a big Fire Elemental, which is pretty nice. So yeah, a Fire 2 is nice to have. With the air, you can do air evocations. You could do big air elementals, but you would either need Storm or spend 2 air gems on every elemental. Air 2 can Cloud Appease. Air 2 can do Wind Guide. Air 2 can potentially do Arrow Fend. You could do Mist if you like. Air 2 is definitely a nice spell to have. Water 2 can do the point buffing cycle, the Noble Commander. Earth 2 can do the point buffing cycle as well. The Earth 2 can also make hammers at construction 4. You make the Earth boots and then you make the hammer. The Earth 2 can also do summon Earth power, then Legions of Steel and Strength of Giants, which are great to have on your line holders. Strength of Giants is also very nice on your archers, because I think for a bow it's strength divided by 3, so Strength of Giants will probably give you 1 extra point of damage. And as I discussed before, 1 extra point of damage or 1 extra point of protection can actually make a big difference when the damage is just at that point of getting through the protection. The Nature 2 variant can do Thistle Mace, which will make you climb to Nature 3. It can summon a Huli Jing at Conjuration 6, which is a Nature 3 with some random cross paths, which is also very nice to have, and it can also do the point buffing cycle. So yeah, every variant of this mage has uses. And then last, there's the Celestial Master. The Celestial Master is capital only. The Master of the 5 Elements is also capital only, by the way. But Celestial Master is capital only. 320 gold. He is Holy 2 and Astral, so with 2 Communion Slaves you have a Holy 3, which is great if you want to do Divine Blessing. So you can actually, like, the ghosts just stream forward, so you need Divine Blessing to bless your ghosts. So if you don't have your Prophet nearby, this guy is your way of blessing your ghosts easily. He is 4 recruitment points, so you will not be getting a lot of them. He also has to compete with capital turns for your other capital mage, and I think you will generally prefer to get a lot of Masters of the 5 Elements than getting these guys. But you'll have a few of them, because they definitely have their uses. You can use them for early site searching. They can fly, so they can get to a battle if you didn't expect to meet them there. They have a lot of randoms. In the first row they have air, which makes them an air 2, which can cloud the priest and do all the air 2 stuff that a master of the 5 elements could do. But also have communion master, because they're all astral 1, so you'll get an air 2 into your communion. They can be water 3, which is good for site searching. You can make a robe of the sea at construction 4, which will make you water 4. You can get an astral 2, which is good for things like mind hunting, teleport, gateway. But with those slow, heavy footmen, this guy can actually just teleport a bunch of heavy footmen to the other side of your empire and fight in a war when it's still relevant. The 10% randoms I just would completely not even think about, because it's 10% on a capital only 4 commander point mage. If you were recruiting these all the time, on average you would get one of these 10% randoms every 40 turns. On average, that's less than 2 times in a game of Dominions. Just forget about it. And then there's the last randoms, which are quite interesting. For Fire 2, you get a Communion Master with high fire. So any of the big fire spells that you want to cast in a battle, that's your guy. The Earth 1 has the Earth Astral Crosspath, which you really want, because then you can cast all the Crystal Gear, Crystal Coin, lots of good stuff. The Dead 1 can make a Skull of Fire. He can also Twiceborn, and getting a mage this powerful Twiceborn is very nice, in my opinion. And then the Nature 1. The Nature 1 with a bit of boosting or empowering one for 30 gems can actually get you a Moonvine bracelet, which will get you up another point in nature. So if you're not using a Hully Ying to make a Moonvine bracelet, maybe you summoned one but it wasn't an astral Hully Ying, and you don't want to summon another one, a Hully Ying costs you 30 nature gems. Empowering a nature celestial master would also cost you 30 nature gems, and then you have guaranteed access to Moonvine bracelets. Let's have a look at the summons. So the first summon, this is your only commander summon, is the Hully Ying. And the Hully Ying is nature 3 with a random, actually a bunch of randoms, but there's a bunch of 50% randoms and then there's a 25% random. They come with 5 poison resistance, which is nice, I guess. They are stealthy, 80. They have magic power, which doesn't come into play all that much. But most importantly, they're a spy. Being a spy with magic is actually really good, because you can sneak into somebody's capital and you can do the spy action, and then you have access to all their score graphs, including things like research and gem income. So getting one of these, getting to someone's capital and spying on them will tell you exactly how well that player is doing. The randoms that you can get, well, you can get air, you can get up to 3 air if you're insanely lucky, but let's just assume with all the randoms that you get 1 point. An air random is not that useful. There isn't that much air nature crosspath stuff that I would say you really want. The water random can cast foul vapors. Now you have other ways of casting foul vapors. I wouldn't go summoning these just because you want foul vapors. I would just put a bit of gear on a guy that can already do it. But it's there. The earth one can craft nature earth crosspath stuff, which you already have access to, but it's still there. What it can also do, if you give it a crystal matrix, is cast Strength of Gaia in your communion, which will give them regen and bark skin and strength. Strength is not that useful for communion slaves, but regen and bark skin on your communion slaves is actually quite nice. So And then the astral variant can make you that Moonvine bracelet, which you would otherwise need a random and you need to empower. So getting an astral one is actually quite nice. Then there's a bunch of sacred troops that you can summon. The first one is the Celestial Soldier. The Celestial Soldier you can summon at Conjuration 6. The spell costs 15 air gems to cast. You need to have an Air 2 Astral 1 to cast it, which means that your only option really to do that is a Celestial Master, which you won't have a lot of. And then it's 3 air gems per Celestial Soldier, and you probably have other things you can be doing with air gems. They are, however, really good. They have good protection, really good attack and defense skills. They have a glaive on a strength 18 guy, so they hit like a truck. It's just a question of, do you really want to spend your air gems on a soldier? Then there's the Celestial Servant. The Celestial Servant is bad in every conceivable way. You can summon them for one Earth Gem, but your mage needs to be Earth Astral to summon them. And the only way to get Earth Astral is to have it as a random on a Celestial Master, and then he'll be summoning one of these garbage troops a turn. On top of that, he eats all your food, even though he doesn't need to. He eats 3 supply a turn. He has a garbage rate. He has attack 9, defense 8, and 48 hit points. The only way I could see these guys ever being useful is if you had a Blood Vengeance Bless, because whatever's gonna kill him is gonna kill itself. Then there's the Demon of Heavenly Rivers. Demon of Heavenly Rivers can be summoned at Conjuration 3. They are, however, 4 water gems per go. They're good. They are berserking, they have low encumbrance, and they're not really a demon. It says demon, but they're actually a magic being, so the anti-demon stuff doesn't work against them. And you need to be Astral 1, Water 1 to summon them, which you have more than enough of. So in a pinch, these guys will do. But to get a single squad that doesn't get morale checks all the time, you want at least 5. So you need to cast this twice. You get 6 of them. That's 24 water gems to get a bunch of guys with big clubs. They will kill stuff. But are they worth it? They are also amphibious, so if a water nation is harassing you, you can go underwater and club them. Then there's the Demon of the Heavenly Fires. These are 2 fire gems each, which is less steep. But still, you have other uses for fire gems probably, so do you want this? Maybe. They have a Flaming Wheel, which is a ranged attack, which has a range 30, so the same as a short bow, 10 ammunition, and does a good amount of damage, because this thing has a strength of 15, which I think means it just does 15 damage flat out, which is armor piercing, fire damage, magic weapon, and it ignores shields. So if you have an opponent that's weak to fire, these guys are actually pretty nice as an alternative to Flaming Arrow Archers. Or even if your opponent has 5 fire resistance, they might even be a better alternative to Flaming Arrow Archers in that case, because they will do 15 fire damage against 5 fire resistance. So they are also situational, but definitely good. They're also not really a demon. They are, however, not amphibious, so they're not going to help you against water nations. And they're flying, which might be a bad thing, because if you put them behind your line and have them shoot, when they run out of ammo, they will fly over your troops, get into a fight, they have 0 protection, they're going to get murdered by the time they do that, so you might not want to do that. Next there's the Tiger. You can conjure tigers at Conjuration 3. You get 10 of them for 10 nature gems, so 1 gem each. And they're not good. They're not sacred. They're undisciplined. They're animals. They have 4 protection. I can't really think of a situation in which you would summon tigers. Really. With any nation. Why? Then there's the Celestial Hound. The Celestial Hound Has 15 shock resistance, patrol bonus of 10. I don't really know why you would want a patrol bonus on this nation, because you're not a blood nation, so I don't really see a good use for the patrol bonus. Celestial Hound is also sacred. It is flying and it has spirit sight. It has decent stats with 14 attack, 10 defense, 17 strength, but its weapons are a bite and a claw, which are magical for some reason. But other than that, they're not that great. You could use them to jump in the enemy backline. I end up not doing it. You need to be air astral to summon them, which is kind of rare. You summon 2 of them for 4 air gems, so you will basically be using a Celestial Master to summon these 2 at a turn. I don't really see that happening, but maybe. If you really wanted something flying to jump in the back line, you could summon 6 of them, blast them, dump them in the back line, and if you have the right situation, the right blast, it's there. Then there's the Ancestral Spirit. The Ancestral Spirit is a sacred, 1 hit point, 8 attack, 8 defense, ethereal, cold resistant, poison resistant, salt vulnerable, or amphibian, undead, battlefield summon. So you have 2 spells, Call Ancestor and Wrath of the Ancestors. Call Ancestor is Conjuration 1, can be cast by a dead one mage, gives him 20 fatigue, and summons a single Ancestral Spirit. This has some niche uses early on. Like if you're storming a fort or defending a fort, they can ethereal, so they can go through the wall. They can carry a bless, so depending on what your bless is, they can do some stuff. It's there. It gives your dead mages something to do. I prefer this over a skeleton, which is the only thing they would, only other thing they would probably be doing. At Conjuration 7, however, there's a spell for 1 dead gem that summons 20 of these guys, and that's really good. If you have a few dead mages and a holy tree, summon 20 of these, do it again, and just bury your opponent in Ancestor Ghosts. And unless they, I don't know, watch this video or something, they're probably not going to see it coming. They also have a Paralyze weapon, which does 5 paralyze damage. If you get a lot of them, they will paralyze important stuff, which is also good. Then the last thing you can summon is a Buffalo. Buffaloes can be summoned at Conjuration 3. You get 5 for 10 nature gems, so 2 gems each. However, this thing is berserking, it is trampling, it is size 4, and it has 43 hit points. So and importantly, it's not undisciplined. So with a few mages you could you could point buff a bunch of Buffalo, and they will go trample the enemy. They're not gonna run away because they're berserkers, and they won't die easily because they have 43 hit points. However, this might work well on other nations that have the Buffaloes, in niche situations of course, because it's still a lot of nature gems to spend on something that will die. But with Tinchi, you already have the Chariots, which are also size 4 tramplers, and the Chariots have 18 protection. So I wouldn't use these as Team Chi, really. But it's there if you're losing the game, you're in a fort, you're panicked, you can't recruit because you're already under siege. You might want to summon the Buffalo, which makes the Tiger, which is also Conjuration 3, extra useful, extra useless. Because if you could summon the Buffalo, same pots, same research level, same cost, both spells are 10 gems, why would you ever summon the Tiger? Alright, that is my nation analysis for the nation of Team Chi. In the next video I'm gonna talk about Pretender design.